Hello, my Hope More family. Happy Friday, TGIF. Are you ready for frank discussions? I am ready for frank discussions, but this will be with a very fair, friendly person who's a friend and also someone who I really think has one of the most beautiful souls I've ever met. So I need you to come on and I want to apologize for starting so much later, but this is going to be worth your while, I promise. And I'm just laughing because I did what I probably shouldn't do. I started talking to my guests and while I'm putting on makeup and trying to get together. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's time. Let's try this again. And I timed out. So instead of having people not knowing what's going on, I was like, let me just post that it's going to be at 11:30, and hopefully some of you on your lunch break still got some time. Others of you may watch this on replay, but every morning, like I do when we do these sessions, I say, please click like and share, like and share. So take out your cell phone, like me, and take it to Hope More page and go ahead and share it. Share it to your page, share it to groups that you think would be interested in the topic and the subject matter. So go ahead and share. And if you're on YouTube, oh, my YouTube family, we are small in number, but we're going to be growing soon. I need you to go ahead and subscribe, and hit the bell so you can be notified of future Hope More shows. So I thank you, God. I thank you guys, and I thank God for your grace in this situation, because I realize when you say you're going to be somewhere at a certain time, it can be very much considered disrespectful not to show up. So please, if you get upset about anybody not showing up when they said, please put that on me and not my guest, because I'm telling you, this particular guest is one of my favorite people of all time. She probably doesn't even know that, and she thinks I'm exaggerating. And although we don't get to talk a lot and haven't seen each other in a few years, my last opportunity to spend time with her was so amazing. It was in San Diego. You know what? That's a shame. It was in San Diego, California. And I just propped myself up in her house for days and hung out with her husband and her child. And although we knew each other in high school and I got to connect with her again in college, I was just so amazed that she and I were not just from the same hometown, even though she wasn't born there, but we also share a lot of the same Judeo-Christian beliefs. And, we also have that Southern charm church background that this woman had involved so much past some of those things that now I often associate with, let me just be honest, white evangelicals or Southern Christians, or sometimes just, good old decent white women. And even though she's so much more than a demographic, I was just really amazed that I was amazed. And I'm like, why am I amazed at this? And it hit me. Hope, you have a lot of acquaintances that are not Black, and you have a number of people you met at churches who you really love, and you would, in a casual conversation, like, oh, my friend this and my friend that, but you really don't have that many sister friends that you consider like really close to your heart, who you would trust, that are not Black. You don't. The truth of it is, I don't. I can count 3 on one hand, and one lives in New York and was raised in a non-religious atmosphere, although she's a Christian now. Her name is Sheila Pano. I love her to life, and she'll be moving soon, so I'll see more of her. And another one is Andrea Niedermeyer, who lives in Dallas now, but she grew up with an artsy mom, and she grew up Catholic, and I don't even say she grew up liberal, but I don't know. There was just a difference in how she thought about things in life. And she's a person who I trust. Like, literally, when I call someone a sister friend, it's like someone who, it doesn't matter if we haven't talked in years. It doesn't matter that my only communication has been Facebook. If I need them, I know I can call them. If I am in town, like I was in California a few years ago, I'm like, yeah, I want to come over and stay for a few days on your sofa. But I didn't stay on the sofa, y'all. I had a very nice little suite to myself. Unlike was nice for the cat, because I think I took the cat's territory. But there are people who I just trust, and I can take my guard down. And I don't know about you, and it's not even about race, but there's very few people, most of us can take our guard down completely, where we're okay about what we say, where we know that even if we're not politically correct, or in the case of being, church girls, if our conversation may not sound like Sunday school, not that it's irreverent, but it's just like, you can be challenged to just sometimes take the mask off, right? To take the, okay, I'm a lawyer hope, or I'm the minister hope, or I'm the, I don't know what else, the wannabe producer actor hope. I could just be hope, the same hope that met you whenever I met you. And in the case of Charissa, when we were in high school, and I was just like, oh, who's this cute little curly haired chick who coming after the number one spot? Because yeah, I was that girl. I was wanting to be valedictorian, so I was always keeping my eyes and ears open for the newest, smartest implant to Perry, Florida. And she was one of them. So I was getting close, just to know my enemy. And then I fell in love with her heart, because I was like, wow, she's really different. She really not just loves God, but she doesn't have this standoffish or this boundary in our friendship where, like, I like you at school, we can hang out at football games, and we can join the same clubs, but I'm never going to invite you over to my house. I'm never going to have you meet my family outside of an event at school. But like, literally, you can come and hang out with me, and and my sisters and brother love you, and just be so open. And really, she was one of the first people who was like that, especially like at that age, that very serious time of high school when you're trying to create what your legacy will be. Charissa, and I keep saying Kipley, but she's McAfee now, is that person. So you guys are sharing and you're liking. And today, as we're talking about highly contagious, having those things, those virtuous things that can infect other people if they're not vaccinated and built an immunity against it, those highly effective things that could infect other people and help make changes. And one or two of the things that I feel this guest has in spades is a heart of empathy and grace. So I need you guys to give a Hope More welcome. I want to hear it James Brown style. I see the likes. Yes, yes, yes. I want you guys to comment during this time, because it's a conversation, okay? It may be less interview that I've had in the past, but I really want to hear from her heart. And don't worry, we're going to leave the good things to last. So come on. Let me hear that applause. Oh, I feel that energy. Y'all feel that energy? All right, she's on James Brown on out. She's probably laughing right now like, Hope, what are you talking about? James Brown. You guys give a warm Hope More welcome to Charissa Kipley McAfee.
Hi.
Hi,
I'm laughing and crying. I don't think I was supposed to cry yet. You are so important to me and so special to me. And our connection is just one of the most valuable things in my life. So I'm just really grateful to be here with you today.
Oh my goodness. I'm grateful to be with you today. We're going to landscape this thing, because we both were like, somebody's little sister is turning 40. And we're like, how is that possible? Well, we're just 40.
We're not 40. Who? What?
I know, right? We were just like 15 and 14 and 13 just 2 seconds ago. How did that happen, Charissa?
I can literally imagine us sitting in booths after high school football games, or when we were skipping homecoming or whatever it was we were doing, and talking about our big dreams and our big goals and real things. And we always had that connection, talking about what was real and true, and what we were excited about and what scared us. And oh my goodness, you spurred me on. I never caught up with you, by the way. I know you had your eyes on me, but I never caught up. I came a little close, but not close enough.
Please, honey, I'm still trying to get that love of a lifetime which you have, and that child. I will never forget our conversation, our very honest and needed conversation about even having a child in your 30s. And at the time, just you being honest about, how beautiful and challenging it was, as well as, you may not even realize it, even you sharing how some of your friends decided to adopt, and the pros of that at a certain age. And I was just like, Charissa, if she's saying this and she is strong and she, loves God, loves family, she's like, listen, It
Oh,
really
it kicked my butt. It kicked my butt. It did. Yes. Yes. And I have one child. And yeah.
and she's wonderful. God gave you a power pack in one. Like if you had to have one child, Ava's a great example of the one child to have. She's
She keeps me
really
on my toes. She is so aware of what's going on in the world, and she asks questions and she points out contradictions and inconsistencies, and you have to be real, and well, she keeps me from being I can't just say, well, mom says. No, well, mom, that's not consistent.
she uses that language, mom. That's not
That's
consistent.
not consistent. I don't see how that
Oh,
lines up. Yeah.
wow, wow. Well, you know what? Because I feel like everybody who's watching knows you, and I'm skipping over the intro. I did a little bit longer intro than I normally do, but I wanted people to understand because unlike some of my other interviews, even though I could have totally listed a bunch of accolades, I've only noted you as Charissa McAfee because I wanted this to be a conversation. It's not about you being something like your job or like your condition of life, but it was just like, you know what? I just want to talk to my friend. And I want you guys to know we have not super prepped this show at all. We talked for like a few minutes before and it had nothing to do with the show, except for the fact that I don't still have on mascara. But yeah, so we did super prep and she just like, I trust you. And I'm like, okay, because I'm not gonna try to put you in a trick bag. But let me, before I keep talking, because I realize in watching back at some of my interviews, I can go. Woo! Would you introduce yourself to the people? And just tell me what
Yes.
you want to tell them about yourself.
Well, I am Hope's friend. I did go to high school with Hope, which was such a gift. I have, well, I live outside of Nashville, Tennessee. I've lived here for a couple of years. Before that, I lived in San Diego for about 20 years. I've been married to my husband, Alan, for it was 20 years this June. That's a miracle. But it's also a blessing. We've had a lot of fun together and helped each other through a lot of challenges, and he keeps me on my toes. I have a daughter named Ava. She is almost 11. Today is her first day of remote learning for her 5th grade school year, and I tried to hover in her little office space where she's set up, and she's like, Mom, I got this. Like, I got this. So I basically left her room crying like she was in kindergarten, saying goodbye, and walked down the stairs of my own house, and left my child to pursue her education on her own as she prefers.
Like our mama.
I love God. I am a Christian and did grow up as an evangelical. I've broken out of that box quite a bit, I would say. But I have changed and my understanding has changed, but God hasn't changed. And that's what's important. But I'm really excited to talk to you. And I, frankly, yes, I've been to school and I have a job, and all of those things are important parts of, putting food on the table. That's good. But I'm just really excited to talk to you about what's going on in our communities, and hear your perspective, and hear what your audience thinks. And I'm excited to be here.
Wow. Well, I don't know if you know Mara, but Mara Brasness has already started clapping or brought.
I know Mara Branis. Yes. Yes, I do.
Yes.
My very, very dear friend in California.
I'm like, all right, now we haven't even started it. She's applying. I appreciate that.
Hi, Mara.
It's so funny. I feel like in some ways I'm tiptoeing gently because it's like, oh, I just want to get into the deep. And one thing I've always loved about our conversations, we're not very like, what's the word? Casual conversation people. No. Like we don't know how to be like, and the weather is nice, and I guess your dress is nice. It's like, ooh, what do you think about proposition so and so?
Exactly.
So exactly. I'm trying to be gentle for the audience, but I often call Fridays Conversation Frank Fridays. And on Frank Fridays, my goal is never to be disrespectful, right? It's just to have really honest conversations. So I want to just tell my audience, if you have questions or comments, this is a safe space. Just be respectful. You don't have to agree. In fact, I doubt if you agree with anything and everything I say if you've watched this show at all.
Same.
And I don't agree with everything I'm sure that Charissa believes, or vice versa. But today's conversation about empathy and grace is not necessarily about trying to win a war of being right. It's trying to have a heart to understand people. It's in a different category, because I feel like, Charissa, that in this world today, it feels like no one's trying to understand each other.
I agree with you, Hope. I was listening to a podcast with Brene Brown, who I really respect her work on empathy and shame. And she was talking about how so often we are hesitant to speak up because we're afraid we'll offend someone or we'll get it wrong. And she said that her mantra is, I'm not here to be right, I'm here to get it right. And I'm trying to embody that and just say, I thought I knew a lot 20 years ago, and I've changed my mind. And I have a feeling 20 years from now, I'll look back on today and have learned and changed. And I mean, when we know better, we do better, right?
Right.
So I just think it's important to work on learning. I'm not here to say that I know anything. I'm here to say that I pretty much don't know a lot, and I'm unlearning a lot. And I love learning. I love reading. I'm a super nerd. That hasn't changed.
And nerds rule the world. Okay,
that's right. I want to do book reports all the time. I read something and I get so excited. I don't have anything original to share, but I get so excited about these ideas and things that I hear, and I just want to tell everyone. And I'm sure it's just terribly annoying, but that's me. I'm very excited and would love to talk about other people's ideas and what I've learned.
Wow. Well, you know what? I'm just gonna, God, so much of me wants to talk about the good old days. I'm like, really, I'm at that age now where everything is like the good old days. And you know the honest truth, everything wasn't the good old days. But
no.
And this is for the sake of the audience also to understand more about why talking to you is such a privilege. And I know I've told you, and if anyone's looked at my Facebook post recently, a few months ago, I had this like little dance routine of this black little girl and this white little girl. I think that she was African, and they may have both lived in Africa. I don't know, but they did like this African dance, and it was so cool. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of, my 3 white sister friends who are not Karens, who are not perfect. But it's like, I can so see, even though we probably look terrible trying to do that dance,
I cannot dance.
Let's do this. Because particularly at the time that video came out that I saw, it just felt like every description of white woman in America was Karen.
Yes.
I know they're not all Karen. I'm not trying to jump to a white woman's defense like y'all need it. Not you in particular, but historically, the pedestal that so many have enjoyed, who didn't ask to be put on it, but have been put on it. But I was just like, you know what? So I gave a big, long shout out to Charissa and Andrea and Sheila, because I realized how blessed I was to have them in my life. And long story short, I've told Julie Anderson, who's a classmate of us,
yes,
92, high school, that. And it's interesting because she and you were transplants, but I will never forget, like in 3rd or 4th grade, Julie Anderson invited me to a slumber party. And that at that time had been the only time any of my white classmates invited me to their home. And definitely the only time I've been asked to spend the night. So it was a really big deal.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly as a kid, and I'll make this quick because I can get really emotional about it. But I remember as a kid being in predominantly white classes and even having predominantly white friends at school, best friends white, I think until junior high, and never being once asked to come to their home for any reason. So that was like a really big deal. And it was a big deal that my mom let me go. And then after that, not that there hadn't been other occasions, I cannot think of any other situation until high school that another white friend invited me to their home, but it wasn't a slumber party with other kids. It was just me and Charissa Kipley and her lovely zany family. And it was, I know it seems so simple, but it was huge for me. I didn't even realize how huge it was because I had a wall up. Truthfully, like I often felt until probably law school, and then law school, God sort of broke that down. That even in front of my white, good Christian people that I knew, I could never let a facade down. I felt like I had to like show the strength of my ancestors at every turn, and I was just amazed because you can't keep that up that long when you spend the night at somebody's house. That I was like, these people, I can like let my guard down. They're not judging me. They're not, and understand, others may have not, but as a young Black girl growing up in Perry, Florida, which, has such a history of racism in our community, that I just, at the time in the 80s, 80s,
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my gosh, they're different. And it's not just because she's a Christian, they're different. Do you remember when you moved to Perry, Florida? Could
Yes,
you
I
talk
do.
a little bit about that journey, and if you noticed any differences regarding just even the interaction of race or any other differences, and you may not have noticed? Could you just tell us a little bit about that? Because I wonder, from your perspective, do you
Yeah.
see anything dynamic?
Granted, I came from a very sheltered white evangelical background where I grew up in Texas, the same people I went to church with, I went to school with, we lived in the same neighborhood. So I had this very sheltered bubble experience. We moved to Florida, and all of a sudden I'm in public school for the first time.
That was the first time in public
It
school?
was, yeah, it was uh just everything. It was like drinking from a fire hose. Everything was different. Luckily, Tracy King invited me to join Perry's Pride, which was our Just Say No to Drugs, skit and dance and leadership group. And I met you, and I met so many great people there. And I started to build some friendships before freshman year started of high school. Well, when we got to high school, I was shocked at how separate the school was. How do you remember F Hall?
Yes.
I would walk down there to go and say hi to my friends from Pride, and they'd be like, "What are you doing here?" Like, "Oh, I
You
I
didn't.
didn't know any better. I didn't know any different."
You guys who have no idea, F Hall was like where the cool Black people were
Yes,
between classes and between school. And Carissa,
and here I come.
chubby cheek, curly hair, just innocent as the day is long. I mean, like,
Well, here's another terribly embarrassing story, but we had a phenomenal English teacher who called us scholars. And I did not understand this. I'm just going to put it all out there. I'm embarrassed, but I didn't understand that about wigs. I did not understand. I did not know this. And so I said, "Oh my goodness, I love your haircut." And I remember a bunch of the guys just cracking up, running out of the room like, "Oh girl, she's she did not get her haircut." I didn't know. I didn't know. And I I guess maybe sometimes that can be helpful. I guess what you don't know, you don't know. But you I I was so accepted and welcomed. I was welcomed by you and by so many Tammy and so many others who I just valued the friendships. And and you didn't take me too seriously. You gave me a hard time, a very hard time. And I was used to, everyone just being uptight, and you just loosened me up. And I would say that our friendship and then also the connections that I made in Pride with so many other kids, that really helped me survive that first year, because it was hard. It was a hard transition.
I couldn't
But
imagine. I couldn't
you,
imagine. And then
but
to come and everything sort of socially is different because people are so separated. Because I'm guessing your other experiences have been more homogenous. So
it was very white. Yes.
obvious based on color. And
Yeah.
I those are the days. And so, like, moving forward, because you mentioned Perry Pride, shout out to Tracy King.
Yes.
For those of you 80 babies, y'all remember Just Say No to Drugs? Well, group Pride did, wonderful things all over the nation, and they had national conventions. And this one, she was like one of the ambassadors. She was doing stuff at the national level. And I'm like, can I do some stuff at the national level? We were singing, take pride in yourself. And even, it was a whole like world. And can I honestly say it was a great world for like goody two shoes?
Yes, it was.
If you were not into drinking and partying, this was a great, because often it was like alternatives, and some people didn't make it through Pride because they
no.
So it was a great safe place, especially for believers, even though it wasn't a Christian organization. So people like Chris and I, we found like-minded people.
Yes.
So let's get on to talking about empathy. So that gives you guys some background how, like, what world we were in. And even though at the time I did not readily recognize it, a part of what I was drawn to was your empathy. And even we would have some really deep plays or skits about drugs and the impact on people. Remember Turnaround? Woo!
Oh, yes.
And I did a little, like Turnaround was this
so emotional.
This type of I don't know what to call it. What they call it was like a live video, and it was about all these dangers in the world trying to pull at you. So we were talking to high school students; they'll be crying. So it was it wasn't like happy-go-lucky necessarily. The message was strong, but I just being in that organization helped open my eyes to a lot of things. So let's fast forward.
Okay,
you choose to go to a Christian school.
I do.
In the mountains, beautiful school. And
beautiful.
And gosh, I'm trying to see where to land. Well, let me just land in San Diego.
Okay.
So here I am, we haven't seen each other for years. And I'm like, listen, I'm coming in your neck of the woods. You're like, come
thrilled. Yes.
You could teach a class on hospitality, because she asked, you have like a little survey. What kind of things do you like to do? And I get to San Diego and there's a whole basket of food of my favorite snacks. I'm like, I don't know how to be a hospitable person like she does. And in part of our conversations and hanging out the days that we did, there were just certain things that came to light that I was like, that is not the Charissa I knew. And it wasn't, and I know that it was quiet, not that it was silent, but you didn't like get on a bully pulpit or soapbox, but it was one conversation in particular, and not to stay right there. And it wasn't really a political conversation. It was just that you had noted that you had a gay coworker who was married, and your heart had just like embraced the idea of, not just that God loves people who may have same-sex attraction, but God was unpeeling in your heart, like your own conviction about what is a homosexuality and and people and their place in the church. And I'm just listening to you like, who is this person? Because in prior conversations with other types, or what I would consider other Southern belles who've been raised in the church and who still love God, not like have gone and they're like, I don't love Jesus anymore, I'm just an atheist. But you're like, everything that I grew up with, or someone said to me, I really am breaking out of that box. And I was just like, what has happened to Charissa? But you don't know this. It sort of gave me permission to explore other convictions I had that I just bought into without it being my own conviction. And it made me like, Lord, how am I to respond to this, not just growing world, but to more people saying, hey, I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of support. I love Jesus. And I just really was like struck by that. And I could tell from our conversation, I wasn't the first Christian friend that you'd ever shared that maybe you were on a journey regarding certain things that I would say evangelical Christianhood often seems to reject wholeheartedly. Let me ask you, and I hate to sort of start right there because I know that could be a hot topic. What do you think it was in your own life that made you see or be open to understanding someone different? And I'm gonna start with the empathy thing. And for those of you guys who may need a lesson, empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. So could you share with us sort of that journey? And maybe it was easy for you, maybe it was hard.
It was all about relationship. I think that growing up, the thought of a gay person was just hypothetical. It was this nebulous idea of, oh, those people. Then when I worked in public health for many years, I had two brilliant supervisors who were, one was lesbian, one was gay, who both were in committed, married, well, I guess they weren't married then, it was before they could be married, in committed relationships. And I became co-workers with a number of gay individuals. And I just realized these are wonderful, kind, and oftentimes very hurt people who've been hurt by people like me, who have said whether or not God loves them, whether or not they are welcome at church. I look back and I think about things I believed or things I said, and I can't believe I said those things, but I did. I have come to believe that in Luke 11, Jesus talks about how much as a human we love our children, and whether it's our biological children or our nieces, nephews, whoever, we love our children. There's nothing we wouldn't do for them. How much more does our Father in heaven love us? And I just think, if I, in my weakness and brokenness, and am capable of love, just imagine how much God loves every single person, and not in a love the sinner, hate the sin kind of way, in a full, complete, you are my beautiful, perfectly made child, and I love you completely, just as you are. And I have just come to realize how many gay and lesbian, LGBTQIA, of our brothers and sisters, and how many of these family members have been so deeply hurt by rejection from the church and rejection from their families, because oftentimes because the church has told the family to reject them in some sort of a misguided, well, if you reject them, then maybe they'll come to their senses and love God and go to heaven, and therefore that's love. That's not love. That is not love. That is the antithesis of love. And so I just am broken over the rejection that so many of our community members must feel, and I want to work to have these conversations, because it's just unfathomable to me that each person is not just fully loved and held by God. I just have to believe that. So I'm grateful that I was able to have relationships with individuals where, like you said, the peeling started to occur, and the blinders came off my eyes, and I came to understand that we are all children of God. So
Wow. Well, you know what? California definitely led the way.
Right,
with,
right.
it was called Proposition 8.
Yes.
And the fight and different things and really people, drawing lines and I mean, and that I truly believe that God's best is not a same-sex relationship on the level of marriage. But also what I got out of that conversation with you is like, well, why do I believe that? Do I believe because I've been told it? What, let me go back through the word. And then what am I to do with this?
Yeah.
Because if I am ministering to someone who's in, let's say, a second marriage and their first husband is not alive, my church tradition that they stand on the word of God is that you're in adultery.
Hmm.
So do I forever communicate to that person that they are rejected, that you're in adultery? And I may truly believe it. Is it my job to, in every interaction, anytime their name is mentioned, I talk about whatever deficit I see? And then I start thinking about my own challenges,
Hmm.
right? And it's stinging to hear people say, well, just because my sin is different than your sin. And I'm like, but wait a minute. My sin is, ain't that, the Bible didn't describe it as an abomination. And then I look at scriptures, and this is where I've been, particularly in the last 5 years of conviction. Scriptures that say, like, if your belly is your God, or it talks about gluttony, or it talks about anything that has to do with a lack of self-discipline in your body, when I know I am struggling to try to repair the years of bad eating and, not exercising enough, and also feeling and giving myself a pass because, there was things that happened in my childhood when I was young, and I used food to overcome it, like
Right.
abuse. And in my
Right.
mind, like, but God understands. And I'm like, could God have a similar relationship with those who, in your mind, struggle with things that you don't think is his best for them? And it's very humbling to not just think about it, but be okay that it ain't my job. It's not my job in this area to judge. I got so much to work out in my life. It is not my job. And my beliefs and my convictions may not have changed, but I have to tell you that conversation almost gave me permission to build my conscience where the convictions are my own. And even prior to that, I can't say that I necessarily had friends that were close friends who were gay, homosexual, whatever. But I can tell you I have people that I love who are. And one particular person is transgender.
Mhm.
And prior to meeting you, I spent time talking to this person. And because at the time we were interested in doing a documentary, and I thought that I knew, because this person's in entertainment, I thought that I knew the story. I thought that I knew, line by line what probably would be said. And after talking to that person for weeks, I was like, whoa, like, this is not just, open and shut
Right.
the way that I think. And I was like, you know what? I'm more convinced ever before, as a believer who believes in the power of missions and believes that Jesus Christ's name should be shared abroad and believe that people need to come to Christ. I was more convinced than ever what that friend or that acquaintance needed was Jesus, not to be transgendered. Like, the
Ye-
biggest thing was that person needed Jesus. Like, you can change your behavior, you can put on something that feels strange to you so that you go and you walk a certain way that the society says, okay, you're a great person, you're worthy of love. And if you still don't have God's love, if you still haven't embraced him, you're still living beneath your privilege. And I was like, so that's something I tell myself nowadays, whether it's, and not to all equate it to negative things, but whatever people have or don't have, you're rich and prosperous. Okay. So it's not all like, oh, if you have a drug addiction, it's the same thing. But whatever state we're in, as a believer, I believe if you understood how much Jesus loved you and gave your life to him, that he is big enough to deal with whatever in you that he feels he wants to repair and help, he's big enough. That's not my job. That's
He's
not
big
my
enough.
job. And it really started with you with
Hmm.
that. I want to go real quick, and I'm looking at the time, but I forgot we started 20 minutes later. So I'm okay. And it's
Good.
so much to unwrap. But so that conversation in San Diego, and it's interesting because I was there prior to seeing you at a death penalty conference.
Yes.
And California is definitely leading the way when it comes to eliminating the death penalty as a way to deal with particular people in life sentences due to murder. And for those of you who don't know, I mean, it's disproportionately given to marginalized communities, particularly Black men,
Right.
and particularly Black people who kill white people. Now, that's not why I'm against death penalty, because in large part, I'm not principally against it. You take a life, your life can be taken. But practically, I'm against it both because, and everybody has different convictions, but because of the fact that it's not been proven to be a deterrent.
Right.
So we in America are not supposed to be doing sentences just for revenge. So if it's not a deterrent and it's more expensive to keep people on death row and is disproportionately given to Black people,
Right.
then why should I support this institution? And and so I was there with a lot of people who I was expecting to be bleeding hearts, regardless of political swinging, but just
Sure.
bleeding hearts for the people. But I realized it's such sort of like a cause celebrity that a lot of people had no hearts for people as much as I'm from Harvard, and this looks really good for me to be against death penalty. They may still really look down on the very clients that I'm like, yes, we're trying to get, you know, there are people who reform or there are people who are innocent. And not that there weren't people like that, but it was sort of like I still didn't see, like, I was surprised the lack of empathy I saw. And or in this case, grace. And there's so many descriptions of grace, and we realize grace comes from God. But in this term, I'm using it as a courteous goodwill, an act of mercy or pardon. And let's just face it, particularly as evangelical Christians, and we can be so, we can find that we believe that someone's violated the word of God, and we judge them so harshly, like, you're this, you'll never be anything else but this. And it's like, where is the mercy or the pardon? Where is the act of Jesus that was shown as the woman was being stoned for adultery? And these self-righteous people had stones in their hand. And
Mhm.
listen, if she was an adulteress, she was going against the word of God, and they were so ready to kill her. And Jesus said, those of you without sin, cast the first stone. And has been depicted in so many Bible stories and Sunday school videos, what people start dropping their stones and shimmering away. And so I realize there is a time for retribution, and there is a time for not revenge, but you do reap what you sow. But I just sometimes get so sad that as believers in today's society, we're often casted as the people throwing the stones first
Yeah.
versus people extending grace. And along the same lines, I've been really, really inspired by you. Charissa is like a Facebook champion. She's on there with social media posts, and I did a fundraiser where I was trying to raise money for public defenders, and I've seen on your Facebook your support of criminal justice reform and sentencing reform, and I think that is a huge effort of grace, because I would say even if a majority of people may have been over sentenced or there's a lot of problems, let's say a good percentage of people did do something wrong, right? They somehow came to the attention of police, and maybe what and how they were treated was also unjust, which we have to deal with. But I was just wondering, where did that come from
Hmm.
for you? Like, the idea that I'm supporting people who the rest of the world is sort of like, they're in jail, they did it. What about you made you open to that grace, extending grace?
I think information, actually. I had this idea in my head that everyone in jail belonged to be there and that there were very specific rules. If you did this, then everyone, well, the sentence is 8 years. Well, it turns out the sentence might be probation or it might be life. It depends on who you are, what you look like, what your circumstances are, what kind of a lawyer you can afford, what part of the country you're in, what judge you get assigned. There's not a consistency or accountability. And
Yeah.
I think about how in our evangelical world, there's such a cancel culture. It's such a, well, if you don't line up and believe all these things, you're out. You're done. Goodbye. Don't get out of line. Don't go against the agreed upon beliefs. And I, what I've come to believe is that things aren't as clear as we think that they are. And from afar, it might appear that, oh, there's a system and we can just trust that the system's in place. And if you didn't do something wrong, then you wouldn't be there. Well, there's a good chance that maybe you've been sitting in jail for 3 years because you couldn't afford your $5,000 bail and you didn't do what you were accused of, and you've lost your job, you've lost your children, your life has been ruined and disrupted because we have a cash bail system that is unjust and that destroys lives. We could probably spend hours talking about all of the challenges and truly evil components of our current justice system. But I would say this. First of all, let me back up. I did those things. I have created systems that were inequitable. For example, I was the executive director of MAD in San Diego County. I worked with wonderful people and I had fantastic relationships with the law enforcement leadership and city leaders that I worked with. We had annual banquets where we would recognize the officers with the most DUI arrests. Seemed like a good idea. That's what everyone in MAD did nationally. It's a horrible idea. Why in the world would we have a contest to see who can arrest the most people?
Wow.
That's a poor measurement. And when those systems encourage an increase in numbers, when you have quotas of arrests that need to be made, who's going to get pulled over? What neighborhoods will be targeted? And I gave awards for that, Hope. I did that. I perpetuated that system. I don't like the conversations that are being had now where it's either law enforcement are evil or either they're evil or Black Lives Matter, or it's these very distinct conversations. And instead, first of all, Black lives do matter and our system is unjust. And again and again and again, with our eyes, we see it. We have to call out what we see with our own eyes. Things that happen to my Black brothers and sisters do not happen to me. This is wrong. I don't have to worry when I'm driving my car that I'm going to be pulled over. I can drive with an expired plate and won't get pulled over. And then you have individuals who get pulled over 30, 40, 50 times for nothing, just because of the color of their skin. That is wrong. For law enforcement, I look at the funding. I believe that budgets are moral documents. We put our money where we believe it should go. Right now, if you look at any city in America and you look at the budget for law enforcement versus social services, food, housing, any kind of a program that would help address some of the issues that ultimately often lead to incarceration or interactions with law enforcement, it's oftentimes 100 to 1. The funding goes to law enforcement. I think that what's important is that when folks say things like defund the police, it's not abolish the police. It's okay, do we need, if 5% of the calls are for violent, if someone's shown up with a gun or a knife or, whatever the situation is, but 95% are, okay, there's someone who's mumbling to themselves outside of a store, or someone, there's mental health issues, there's all kinds of social services issues. Let's divert some of the funds and address these issues appropriately. We don't need more law enforcement. We need less, so that we can address those underlying issues, those root causes. And I can go on and on, but I think I've had to realize things that I thought I knew, I don't know. And there's information out there. And by the way, it's important that we Google and do research. I know that I follow so many brilliant leaders of color who have done amazing work, and constantly they're being asked online, oh, tell me about this, educate me about this, I don't agree with this. These people don't owe us, they don't owe anyone anything. Stop taking up and requiring time. Go do your own research, buy a book, start with maybe Austin Channing Brown's I'm Still Here. That is an eye-opening book and a convicting book. And I'm basically the white girl in every story that she describes. I'm that girl. I just shudder. She describes experiences in the workplace, experiences at school, experiences doing volunteer work. And I'm that white girl, Hope. And it makes me sick to my stomach, but I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to do what Brene Brown says. I'm not here to be right. I'm here to learn how to get it right. And I think that there's a lot of good conversations we could have. And I would just say one other thing. I see a lot of posts where people are like, oh, those liberals or those left coast people. That's me. So if you see that and it's like, oh, those Democrats, blah, 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 or whatever, just think, well, okay, well, that one of those is Charissa, and maybe I knew her from high school or college, or maybe she's my neighbor or my family member. And I'm curious why she thinks that way. And I'm curious why you think, whoever you are, I'm curious why you think that way. Let's have a conversation. And it doesn't have to be all, daggers and right. I'm not gonna like slash your tires or anything. I'm not gonna send you hate mail and I'm also not going to, I'm really not going to try to convince you or change you, because I think it's just about relationships and understanding. And I want to learn, and I would love to share things I've learned. And no one system has it right. No one group has it right. We all have things to learn and grow from each other. But if you see something, or if you're thinking, oh, those liberals, oh, all they want to do is, let everyone out of jail and give everyone free ride. And well, just think, one of those people is Charissa, and I'd love to talk about it.
It is so funny that you identify as liberal, because I didn't even know that you did.
I am.
I think that's great. And the reason why I said I didn't know that you did, because what I was struck by in that conversation at your house, while the cat was looking at me like, I don't want you here. And
no, she liked you. She missed you when you left.
Was that I was convicted as a believer, because the question was, what would Jesus do, right? And whether someone's a Democrat or a Republican or liberal or conservative, at the heart of who we are in creation is of God. And I was like, what? And oh man, I wish we had more time, but what? I don't know when it changed, and maybe it's always been, because, and this is not for white guilt. This is not a conversation about false sense of obligation, but it makes me sad. But I have to think, well, Hope, remember, there are Christian slave owners.
Yes, who use the Bible.
They use the Bible to justify.
Yes.
Remember, there were Christians in Nazi Germany who supported Hitler.
That's correct.
And they may not have, because a lot of propaganda was out there, so they may not have understood that their Jewish brothers and neighbors who were being sent away were, many of them, being exterminated. But they saw, and there's some type of justification in their heart. Now, granted, there are a lot of priests and Catholics who went to some of those camps too, because they're fighting against fascism. But I was like, Christians are just like any other people. They can get it wrong and get it wrong in a way that's irretrievably, well, I shouldn't say irretrievably, but just has a major impact that breaks God's heart.
Yes.
And so when I look at America in particular, and I scratch my head, I know that one of the strategies of, I'm just going to say the devil, is to separate the church.
Yeah.
To have us separated based on if you're liberal leaning or conservative or Republican or not. Are you Trump or anti-Trump? And I feel like I've seen so many gains in the uniting of believers of all colors, divided because of politics, that I'm like, wow, that's the goal. The goal is to split the church because we're stronger together. I get really, really upset when I see in the evangelical Christian church an equation of patriotism to Jesus Christ.
Yes,
or
yes.
If you kneel, which normally kneeling is considered humility and the Father.
Yes.
If you kneel at a game, you're against the troops. And if you're doing that, then you're against God, because we're God's chosen people. We may not say it like that, but we're basically saying we're God's chosen people, and anything against or anything that doesn't promote in lockstep with the majority racist concept of what America is when we look at history, then you're against God. I mean, listen, and this is not a commentary on who you should vote for president, but yesterday I understand that President Trump said Biden is not for God. And I've been in prayer circles during the elections of governors, and my friend Stacey Abrams was running in Georgia.
Yes.
And then Ron DeSantis and Andrew Gillum, and Gillum was a Black man running in Florida.
Yes.
And I end up getting out of a couple of prayer groups where I was probably the only Black. And people were basically saying Gillum was the devil and DeSantis was a saint. And I'm like, can we pray for God's will? Like, I don't understand this. And I could put up a lot of reasons for it. But I was like, I wonder how brokenhearted God is that we're equating maybe differences of rule in government to who is godly and who's not. And most recently, because I want to talk to you about immigration, all these kind of things.
Me too.
Recently, maybe we got to do a part 2. You're going to be my conscientious Christian friend doing commentary, because I love it, because God's not afraid of these questions.
No.
But most recently, this mass craziness has become a religious and a political weapon.
Yes.
And I'm like, the other day, because in my little hometown, we are now #1 in New York Times for one of the hotspot of COVID. Because literally, Crystal, we went, and you used to live here, so I'm saying we went from being like still one of the last 3 counties that had no cases or 1 or 2 to having numbers double in less than a week. And I still see, not just like in the minority, a majority of people downtown, because there's some places I love to go downtown, the people behind the counter don't have a mask on. The people, now I understand if you're eating, you may not be able to have your mask on, but they're talking, the food is over, no mask. And I'm just like, and someone would just say like, someone, Tam Turnage, formerly, now Tammy Columbia. I love it.
Hi, Tam.
So the most recent thing, not most recent, but it's been coming out, but I was like, please, Lord, help us, God. Was someone saying, or people saying, I was made in the image of God. It is against my religion to put on a mask and cover the image. And I'm like, first of all, you think being made in the image of God, God looks like you with your freckles and your brown hair? Secondly, I'm like, you're covering from here to here, so your whole face is not covered.
Right.
And third, stop blaming God. Just say you don't want to do it.
Right.
Just say that because your leader's not wearing a mask, you feel that is betrayal to wear one. Be honest with your thing. And it upsets me because Oh God, there's so much I can say. But this one thing came to me last night in my prayers. Because I have to pray. There's so much I want to post, and God's like, I'm calling you to reach those people. So you need to like be careful how you say things. But I'm like, these are the same people who will be first in line with a pro-life sign, where you feel convicted in your heart to control what happens to another woman's body who's pregnant. You're so pro-life that you want to save this unborn child who you do not know. But you're now saying your body can't be controlled in the few minutes you're in Walmart by putting a mask over your nose and mouth to protect you and someone else. I dare say you're not pro-life at all. You're political.
Yeah.
Your party says we're against this. You say I'm against it. Because how could you care about what a woman does with her body to protect someone you haven't met, and you refuse to govern your own body in a way that can protect people you know in your community? You are not pro-life at all. You are a lie. And as my granddad would say, and the truth is not in you.
That's right. As my daughter would say, that is inconsistent. We are called to love our neighbors. Wear a mask and love your neighbor. I don't understand. And similar to what you're saying, I definitely was told what to do with my body when it came to how thick my strap could be or how short my shorts could be. And you could be sent home from school if you did not dress appropriately. So, you know what? I think our schools and our systems are very adept at policing what women put on or don't put on their bodies. So, you know what? I think we can handle putting a little square of fabric over our nose and mouth in public. I think about surgeons operating for 8-10 hours with the mask on. And like you said, I can't be bothered for 10 minutes in Walmart to put my mask on. I think it's part of the sin of individualism and the way that we worship our ability to do what we want to do. And that's, to me, very unchristian. I was brought up, at least what my impression from the church was, you couldn't be a Democrat and a Christian. I love what you're saying about how we need to not be divided. We need to be together and we need to understand. And if that's something folks want to talk to me about, that's fine. I am a Christian and I disagree with a lot of what's happening on the other side of the aisle. I do, but my faith is probably the number one reason why. And I've just met so many people of faith who love God with their whole heart and who want to love others, whether it's by saying, wear a mask, people, or by saying, let's not put people in jail just and leave them there for years just because that's the system. I think there's so many conversations we could have outside of partisanship. I do think that our political systems are one of our best ways to be a neighbor. Nish Weiseth says this. She says, I wrote it down. She says, the largest systemic tool we have to at our disposal to love our neighbor, because we can impact the system and make changes for justice and mercy and to take care of the widow and the orphan and the sick and the poor. I mean, there's so much we can do, but it's not about partisanship. It is about coming together and about that shared set of values and shared set of beliefs. And it requires empathy. It requires that imagination of what must it be like in their shoes, and just breaking free of that box that keeps us from wanting to understand or see others, or wanting to maybe feel uncomfortable that maybe what I believe isn't exactly the only way to believe, or maybe it's not even right. I don't know. That's an uncomfortable feeling, and it's a humbling feeling. But I think we're called to that discomfort and to that humility and to that imagination and that curiosity to relationship. And that's the only way we can, I believe, get through these times, is that relationship. And for us to say, I mean, Hope, I don't care what your politics are. I don't. I love you, and I want to hear what you have to say. I think you are a wise and wonderful woman and human, and I want to hear what you have to say, and I want you to speak your truth into my life, and I will take it and listen and learn. And if we had more learning and if we extended more grace to each other in that process of knowing I'm probably going to look back on this recording and say, oh, I wish I hadn't used that term. Or when I said this, that was this. Because I don't want to offend, or I don't want to in any way diminish the light of others, or make it seem that these are my ideas. They're not.
Right.
They're others. So I think empathy and grace are critical tools, and just the key ingredients to helping us get through coronavirus, to helping us disrupt systems, to helping us transform some of the things that we take for granted. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. We can change.
Well, I think you're super courageous, and I haven't really checked out your friend list. You may be more like my friend Janelle, who her Facebook friend list are her real friends, so she's not caring about having thousands of people. But I know in this this tense situation in society with George Floyd's death and coronavirus, and all these things are happening all over the world, people are deciding to cancel friends because of what they post on Facebook. And I have a friend who's biracial, and she has lovely white relatives who totally disagree with anything remotely to Black Lives Matter. And I have friends who are Black who are super conservative, and they're Trump supporters, and they feel uncomfortable with any discussion about race because it almost makes them feel other in a maybe a space or a church where they feel very accepted. So they don't want to rock the boat, and they truly may feel like the majority of the people they're around in a way that I just don't understand as a Black woman. Like, how can you keep supporting what is obviously lies and racist and bigotry? And I can understand also they're like, hey, that's not my thing. I don't really care about that part because I'm pro-life or whatever it is. And so what they post on Facebook, they have to be very careful because they're sort of feeling like they're in between worlds. You are my only white friend, and I'm not saying you're the only white person I know, but a person who I feels like a sister friend who routinely posts things to provoke consciousness amongst believers. Whether it's I think 2 days ago you posted about that family that was wrongfully and mistakenly pulled over because of a license tag that was really for a stolen motorcycle, and they had a 10-year-old, all these girls, minor children, and an adult mother, like face down on the ground with their hands behind their back. And you said boldly, like, this would not happen to me or Ava. This would not happen. No. And I feel that there are those who may feel that way, but they definitely won't post it because it brings in all this other political garb and or some thought that they're not for the blue. And I'm like, you may individually have love for me or some Black person but you don't care about us. I don't want to sound like Michael Jackson. They don't really care about us. And I'm like, I have to eat that, right? I eat it. And then I'm like, God, keep my heart open so that I still have grace and mercy towards them and whatever they're facing. But it's so comforting to look over at Charissa McAfee's page and take stuff off of your page to put on mine, because you're trying to explain and really appeal to anyone that this is okay. This is what Black Lives Matter. It doesn't mean that no lives matter. And this is what immigrants are going through. And this is maybe what maybe you think that you have to believe this way because you're Christian. And this is why Black Lives Matter. And this is why justice reform. I feel like, I know that Jesus Christ, if he had to be an attorney, would be a defense attorney because he sits at the throne of God and he makes intercession for us. And that's what defense attorneys do. Please, this person may or may not have done what you think they've done, or maybe they did do it, but have mercy on them. Consider where they're from. Mitigation. Isn't that what Jesus does with us?
Yeah.
And so when I say you're courageous, when I think you are frank, fabulous, when I think you're quiet, but you are unyielding, I'm so proud of you because it's just who you are and it's who God's made you. And I wanted to say this last thing, and then I'm gonna let you say whatever you want to share or end. I don't know if it's a prayer, a poem, a shout out. Something about my experience in Christ Jesus, and I've said this more than once on other shows, but I want to share it again with you if I never have. And I don't think I ever have, because this was so painful to me that I've never really talked about it before. One of the things that God is healing me of, and I know he's healing me, and I wasn't completely healed because I recently had a disagreement on a board where I'm the youngest and the only Black. And I felt the fear of my childhood and the things I've been told about white people. It came back up in a real way, and it hurt me in a real way. And it was this belief that the nicest white people in the world, if you go against another white person, they're always going to take the white person's side. Always. And it was something that was drummed into me by Black people. And I'm, growing up, I could be like, oh no, I don't believe that. But unfortunately, anecdotally, it sort of showed itself. And I was like, God, but I don't want to be held to the same craziness to say someone says a Black person beat me up, so now Black people are violent. But I hate to say that I've experienced it so much. I experienced it in law school. I experienced it, I can't say in churches, and I did have an opportunity for 3 years to be a part of a predominantly white church that was actually really life-changing for me, because I didn't realize how much I need to work out in my own life when it came to race and Christianity. In high school, I ran for student council president. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
And I ran against a very lovely person in our high school who was very popular, was a cheerleader and blonde and beautiful and really a sweet girl. And a part of her campaign was giving out like lollipops. And the lollipops were the dum-dums. They're like the least expensive lollipop you can give.
Right.
We did our assembly speeches. And I come up with this whole slogan, hope is a lifesaver, not a dum-dum. And I was passing out lifesavers, or my people threw it out. And now I think about it, and I've thought about it in the past, like, I can't say it was God that convicted me, but there was a part of me was like, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should do something else. But I never thought don't do it because it wouldn't be effective or misread. But something happened, and this is taking me a lot longer to share, and I don't want to get emotional, but the people in my group who were like throwing out, and I was like, they're like, hope is a lifesaver, not a dum-dum. There's some people that spread and took it as me saying, hope is a lifesaver, not a dumb blonde. And I've understood that person was very hurt. They cried. It was like a pre-Karen S thing in my mind. Like, what? I did not say dumb blonde. When have I ever called you? Like, we're friends. Why would I do that? And it was all of a sudden the momentum I felt my campaign from many of the white classmates I had was shutting me out. Like, you were being mean to her. And it may not have had anything to do with race, but it was amazing how I didn't see that from non-white students. They may not even voted for me, but they didn't all of a sudden think that, how dare you, aggressive woman. And I'm like, when have I ever been aggressive at this high school?
Never.
And so you were like one of the few who came to me as like, you know what, Hope? People know that you're not like that. Don't worry about it. And you may not even remember that, but you're like, people know that you're not like that. You know, you've been on student council. Don't worry about that. And I just really, you were the evidence that it wasn't true that everybody acts a certain way. And like I said, it's really weird because I don't think I've ever talked about this before.
No.
But it really hurt me. It hurt me more than the loss. That all of a sudden, if I'm honest, I have been called at that time all of my life by certain people, not everybody, an Oreo. You think you're white. Why you have so many white friends? You talk white. And I'll be like, do you live in Perry? Who talks with me? I don't talk white. I don't talk Southern country. I just, and then for some who were misdirected and misguided, they were like, some white friends were like, oh, you're different than other Black people. And they thought they were complimenting me. Or you're really different. And so I felt like I walked this line. And the one thing I didn't think anybody could ever put at my feet, that I was this mean, angry Black girl. And in one instant of this beautiful little white cheerleader chick crying, as all of a sudden I became the monster. And you were one of the few, and I don't want to say the only, but I don't remember anybody else coming to me and sort of saying, no, it's going to be okay. I think you were Pollyanna-ish in the moment. I was like, okay, I may have just lost because she's more beautiful than I am. But it just was like, what is going on? I felt like for a while I was hated. And I just always trusted that even if you got it wrong or right in what you said or how you responded, I just never felt that it was through some type of predetermined way Black and white people are supposed to talk. And it gave me hope that outside of this town, there were people like that. Charissa, you would be happy to know that I think Perry has come a long way.
Yeah.
Perry has come a long way. And I'm happy to know that too. But what I'm realizing in our conversation today is I've come a long way. Yeah. It's like I have fought and I fight to not be myopic in how I even respond to those who don't care about being empathetic to, say, Black Lives Mattering or immigrants or racism, that I really am like, I hope more for your life. I hope more for this moment. I hope more for our children.
Yeah.
And I just really thank you. And this is just an excuse for me to get you on to sing Triumph. If any of y'all in Perry's Pride, that was Charissa's solo jam. But I want to do that. And we have definitely spent a little bit over time, but I don't really care. I think people need to hear this, and I know it won't be our last time. But my heart just wants to be like Jesus. It really does. And there have been times I've had to repent because I'm like, I'm not going to get on this prayer line because all these little Florida Christians are just thinking one way. And God's like, I need you to pray with them. They need you. But I'm like, I'm tired. I want to go back to Atlanta, the chocolate city, where I'm not dealing with this. But it's like, I'm calling you. You said you see division. I'm calling you to be unity. And I'm like, this is just not fair. And I'm sorry I'm talking so long, but thinking about you gives me hope for the generations. And before you say anything, I just want you to know whoever Mara is, she's awesome. She continues.
She is awesome.
Andre says amen. He said amen very early on. Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. Oh my goodness. Oh, I love you.
My friends. I mean, I think people will be really blessed. And we don't have the answers, but we don't have to have the answers. We need Jesus. All these people that we're looking around like, you're not good enough and you're not whatever. We all are desperate for a savior. I'm going to shut up now. What would you like to say or leave with the people?
I love you.
Oh, I love you too. Don't make me cry. I'm going to remove myself. I'm going to let you say whatever.
I just wanted to read one quote from Barbara Brown Taylor, who is an author and a religious leader and teacher who has come to mean a lot to me. And she says, "The only clear line I draw these days is this: When my religion tries to come between me and my neighbor, I will always choose my neighbor. Jesus never commanded me to love my religion. And so I hope we can all love our neighbors. Um, and hope I love you. And thank you for loving me. It's one of the biggest gifts of my life. Thank you.
Oh man, that was powerful. Wow. I want you to stay on for a second after we say goodbye to everyone.
Okay.
Thank you all. I hope this is contagious. I hope you've gotten infected. And it may not have for you anything to do with race, sexuality, politics. Maybe it's just the coworker who's not that cool at your job and you just ask that person for lunch. It may be your neighbor whose yard isn't as nice as yours and you consider mowing their lawn, you know? Or it may just be you posting to someone's Facebook how beautiful and wonderful they are and you're just thinking about them. Those are acts of empathy. Those are acts of grace. Those are, instead of reporting them to the local, city audience, maybe you can say, hey, I noticed, hey, while I'm mowing my little yard over here, do you mind if I mow yours? We need more of that. And it is contagious. When someone gives of themselves and they're different from you in particular, and they know you don't owe them anything, you'll be amazed. Charissa asking me to spend the night forever made me think, oh, there's more to what could happen in my relationships with people despite race, because they're people like her. So God bless you. Y'all have a good day. Thank God it's Friday. Thank God for gutsy conversations. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. This is Hope Dents, and this is Hope More.